Hello, it is I, Chiron, and I am going to tell you the story of one of my greatest students. His name was Jason, and he and his crew of Argonauts set on a perilous journey to reclaim the Golden Fleece. This was all quite a long time ago. Ah, I'm burning! I'm burning! Oh, another mob down, and hello people, it is HelioSolaran, and today I'm giving you guys a special video to make up for the fact that I didn't make one last week. This is actually a project I've been working on, and it's for class grade. It's an interesting way of retelling the story of Jason and Medea and the quest for the Golden Fleece, specifically around the part where they peel out of Colchis. Well, let's get started, shall we? Our adventurous tale begins in a kingdom a long time ago in a faraway land, Greece. There was a king and a queen, and they had two adorable children, but there was an issue. The king was not faithful to his wife and wanted a new queen. So he kind of had this thing going on with another woman, and eventually she was made queen in the old queen's stead. Worst part is, she didn't like the idea that those two kids would be the heirs, so she decided to get rid of the kids and have hers be the heirs. The old queen saw this and decided that she'd have a gold-skinned ram save her children by taking them overseas to a kingdom far away, known as Colchis. Now, I don't want to make too much of a spoiler, but only one kid makes it. He's very warmly received, and the ram, is rewarded for his good deed by getting turned into a solid gold ram, not just golden fleeced, and having his whole fleece hung up on a sacred tree in a sacred lake in a sacred forest to be forever guarded by a horrifying dragon. And well, the land has been fertile ever since. Now, what does this have to do with Jason? It actually has everything to do with his story, though we only get to see the fleece towards the end. In another kingdom, unrelated to the previous one, a king was beginning to grow weary of his crown. So, he needed someone to take the reins for him, but his only son Jason was not yet of age to become king. So he was forced to have his brother crowned instead. His brother was Peleus, and he was a pretty cruel guy. His citizens lived in misery for the majority of his rule. The worst part, he wanted to kill Jason so that way it would be his son that would rule. The king saw this coming and decided that Chiron would be the one to raise the kid until he is ready to reclaim the throne from his brother. Chiron would teach him everything he knew, and, well, hopefully one day he'd be all set to reclaim that throne. Now, one thing for my viewers who are wondering why Chiron would be a choice is because he was the educator of many children of kings. He was reputed for being the wisest of the centaurs and skilled in archery, of which he would be teaching Jason. So when Jason was almost ready to go, he had grown into a handsome, wise, and kind-hearted young man. And it was by this time that he was fully prepared to take the throne from his uncle. But first, he would have to journey across vast landscapes to get to his home. Now, he wandered and wandered and wandered and wandered and wandered until he came to one of his first major obstacles on the way home, a large, very dangerous river. Not many people have crossed this river successfully, and anyone else has met a horrible demise because of it. So Jason was in a pretty poor issue when he heard a hag call out his name. Now, this hag, or old lady, just to be polite, needed to get across the river as well. And she pleaded for Jason's help, and as he thought not to help her because she was kind of ugly, Chiron's words repeated in his head that he must always, always be kind to the old and poor, no matter how they look. So Jason helped her, but in the process, he lost one of his prized sandals that his father, the king, got for him. Jason was, without need of saying, very distraught. But the witch, well, not witch, sorry, the old lady told him he had gained a friend, and immediately turned into the goddess Hera, the queen of all gods. And she told him, because of his deed, she will guide him through his journey, give him advice, and help him later on. With that, Jason walked towards his kingdom, pondering what exactly Hera would have in mind for him. As he reached the gates, he felt a sense of duty come over him, as he knew this was the big moment. He would be facing his uncle in a matter of moments, and then would come the matter of reclaiming the throne. Little did Jason know this would be a lot more difficult than he intended. As Jason began his way to the castle, or palace as it were, he noticed that the locals were starting to look at him in a very strange way. They were looking specifically at the fact that he lost only one sandal and therefore had only one sandal on him. Now, what this is weird as is, like if you're a normal guy, but the thing here was that Peleus received word from an old wise man that a one-sandaled young man would come in and overthrow him. Ever since, Peleus has been on guard for such an occasion, although that didn't stop people from knowing, and everyone was overcome by a silence and patience for what was about to happen when Jason entered Peleus's throne. Peleus greeted his nephew warmly, at least that's the impression he tried to give, but on the inside, he was panicked and rather spiteful of Jason. He had to think of a way to save himself, well, not save himself, but save his throne. When Jason started making his claims, Peleus came up with a wicked plan. A grin formed along his face as he asked Jason what he would do should one of his supporters or subordinates be making claims on his throne. Jason replied that he would send them on a quest to retrieve the Golden Fleece, something that would be almost assuredly a death sentence. It took him moments to realize that he had just been tricked into going on a quest many had died from, even attempting. So, rather distraught over his current situation, Jason went to find what he would need for such an endeavor. Now, there were two things Jason needed. First, he needed a boat, and then he would need a crew. He only knew of one man he could possibly go to for such a large task, and that man was Argus. Argus was a world-renowned boat builder and personal friend of the old king. So, he and Jason had a very warm reunion as Jason explained the task he had. Now, Argus advised that Jason go collect all the young men who were able-bodied, and by the time he returned with 50 of them, the ship would be ready to haul off. So Jason sent word to the 4 directions and got whoever would hear him to join in on the quest. People like Hercules and Odysseus' father, Laertes, joined in, and by the time he got to Argus, the ship was ready. So soon they would set off for Colchis, and though their destination was set, the way there would prove treacherous. It took them between clashing rocks and through an island of carnivorous giants that wanted to eat them, of course. Eventually, an old sage pointed the way, and like that, they were at Colchis. The whole trip had been more or less successful, if you don't mind clashing rocks and almost getting eaten by cannibal giants. It was, pretty much worth it. Now came the part where he'd have to ask the king for his most treasured possession, the golden fleece. Now, the king was rather proud of the fleece, so he stated that Jason could not simply just go up to his throne room, request it, and take it to his land. So, the king said, in order for you to have my fleece, you have to get past 3 trials. Those being 2 flaming brazen hoofed cows, an army of skeletal soldiers, and worst of all, a fire-breathing dragon. So, Jason was fearful for his life because this was why the quest was almost death for every last person who has had it before him. But Jason had some luck on his side. The king's daughter Medea, a beautiful enchantress, overheard the conversation, and she offered that in exchange for Jason to marry her, that she would give him everything he would need for this task. Should Jason have accepted, that, it is left to opinion. But she gave him the objects he would need to combat the trials. So, Jason arrived at the sacred forest upon which the fleece was held. First, he had to deal with the bulls. They were aggressive and red hot to the touch. So Jason applied the oil that Medea gave him that would make him impervious to burning or the boiling of flesh such heat would cause. He tamed the cows with rather ease, and next came the skeleton warriors. Medea gave him a potion to be thrown at the army of skeletons that would drive them mad, not only harming them with its initial chemicals, but the madness it caused would make them all fire at each other in unison. By the time Jason had spread out the majority of the chemical, none were left standing. So Jason had his second task complete. but the third one would be the most treacherous. There came out the dragon from the hollow in the tree. It breathed fire all around, challenging Jason, and almost as if it were waiting from its next meal. Even the king was afraid, but Jason was not. With one fell shot of his arrow, the beast was down, and he retrieved the fleece. Now he had to get back to the king and present the fleece as proof that he claimed it. Now, the king was rather lying. He stated that Jason would not escape his city with the fleece, and, well, turns out Jason made a liar out of him twice. Jason escaped with Medea and Medea's little brother, the young prince, who Medea seemed to have taken along with her for some strange reason. When Jason went to check why, the horror struck. She chopped up her little brother into pieces and tossed him overboard as a distraction to the king. She knew that the king would not cease until all the pieces were picked up. But this horrified Jason. He was supposed to marry this woman, and she had just done this. There was no way that he would ever be able to live down the sins of this witch. Jason and his crew returned to their homeland and presented the fleece, and Jason was made king. But the thought of that young prince still haunted Jason to his dying days.